Ron Paul was recently interviewed by Patrick Bet-David, and they talked about the Kennedy assassination. We're going to get into this video because there's 80,000 pages of documents, and they keep coming out and they're trickling out. It shows that there's a lot more information that was related to the CIA and I think other areas that may not have been related to the case that they didn't want out. But I don't know. We'll see. Even the CIA was saying that they didn't believe that there was a single shooter. But I'll talk more about Ron Paul in just a second. Let's start this video.
Remember where you were at the day President John F. Kennedy got assassinated?
I wrote it into my little pamphlet on that not too long ago. Yeah, I was drafted in October of '62. I was in my residency, so they took me out of my residency at Henry Ford Hospital, and I was inducted into the military, and that was over the Cuban crisis. But I was inducted by January of '63, and Kennedy was, and I was a flight surgeon. I was a head flight surgeon at that particular day when Kennedy landed at Kelly Air Force Base the day before he was assassinated, and I had a theoretical responsibility, which was just theoretical. It was, believe me, nothing special, other than the fact that he was there and they told me about it. I was to be aware of it if anything went wrong. I watched the plane take off. I remember that vividly, and then that plane, I think, stopped in Houston, and then the next day it stopped in Dallas, and that was it. So I knew exactly where I was the day before and the day of the assassination. And with my little booklet I've written recently, I talk a lot more about that because my personal experience was the fact that I was close to it the day before he was assassinated.
I didn't know that he was drafted in the military. That's a fun little fact I didn't know of. Actually, the first time I heard of Ron Paul was, I think it was 2012, the re-election of Obama. I think he was running too for a nomination, and I remember him speaking and just making sense, just making lots of sense. Everything he said just made sense. But the way we didn't have a lot of social media back then, and the way primary processes go and mainstream media covering all that, it was like you heard about him and then he just disappeared and then he was gone. And even then, I didn't even fully understand the primary process of how that worked. So he wasn't on the ticket. So if he was on the ticket, I would have voted for him. I I had no idea. But yeah, very interesting character, Ron Paul. I think he's working with Doge right now, but let's continue because I want to see what else he has to say about this other than where he was. And if you were around when Kennedy was killed, where were you? Let me know in the comments.
How your impression of what you think took place, and if you've been following any of the stories with the 80,000 documents that have been released, has anything been shocking to you?
Well, I didn't read those 80,000. But I think today they said, well, we were going to redact it all, but we are not going to do that. No, but my pamphlet, my little story about it is, I think, as a matter of fact, I date that the 1960s as the decade, and the assassination as the installation or the recognition of a coup. Because that's when the FBI, the CIA, and others, just think, Jack Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy assassinated, Martin Luther King assassinated, other civil rights leaders were killed, and I've read every book I could read, and I'm firmly convinced that it was not a lone killer. 80% of the American people say they don't believe the government now. That's really healthy. That's wonderful because Oswald, nobody believes it anymore.
I don't. I certainly like. There's more to the story. I have a theory, and I could be completely wrong, and I'll just give you my theory right now. Is there could have been a second shooter. All right, I'm not going to deny that there could have been a second shooter, but like the biggest conspiracy to this, what I foresee is that there were all these different elements going on. The CIA did have their fingers in every single pie. There were things going on with Israel where they were trying to get nukes. And then the Soviet Union, the CIA was reading all their mail. And then Lee Harvey Oswald probably was working with the CIA and, moonlighting with the Soviet Union. But like, what if this was all just like all these things were moving and then it wound up being dumb luck in the end, and then they had to cover for it because it created such a mess? Like, what if there were elements of the CIA that worked with him directly, that with Oswald directly, and they were stationed in Texas, and then there were rumors that Oswald was going to do something, but everyone thought he was just kind of nuts, kind of like, I hate to say this, but like when you have like a mass incident, I don't know if YouTube will find this acceptable, mass shooting or whatnot, and then there's always some element where people knew but did nothing. Like, was it something where Oswald really was going to do something and someone knew about it and a bunch of people knew about it, but they didn't take him serious or whatnot, and then he literally did get a lucky shot, and because of that they had to fabricate and cover up all these ridiculous stories to cover their own butts? What if that's the case? What if career people in the CIA and FBI, like people that wanted to grow the government, been there 30 years, been in there since FDR, and they have this reputation they have to uphold, and they let this all of these things slide, and it wound up just being a series of events of just overlook things where everything just fell into place like it was an accident. That could have been the case with the Trump shooting. A lot of people are obviously going to a conspiracy, but there was, security failure after security failure after security failure after security failure, because you just thought that just couldn't happen, right? It could have been a second shooter. Or it could have been security failure after security failure after security failure with the Oswald situation. I don't know. That's my crazy theory. Let's continue.
And too many people, that was one thing they always had jokes about. In the Soviet Union, they always made jokes about, the government, because everybody knew what the truth was, but everybody knew they had to lie. It failed. So I think it's But I do. I date
like
60.
Like what he said there. Everyone knew this. Like, there could be a second shooter. I'm not going to deny that. But everyone knew what the truth was, which was epic failure at every level, and no one wanted to be stuck holding the bag, so they all lied. But that's not a very interesting story now, is it?
As a conversion into what the CIA has done, and it's a lot of there's a lot of people who are very well versed in this, and there's a lot of books on this, and I happen to believe a lot of that stuff to be true.
Do you believe, when you say a lot of this stuff, a part of it, the fact that he wanted to end the Fed, and that was one of the things that they were not too happy about? Is that one you believe in, or not necessarily?
I believe that. I've seen some people that might not be, just disagree and say, oh, no, there were other things. No, I'd listen to that. But no, I think it was the monetary issue. That Kennedy wanted to stop the war, but he increased the war in Vietnam, and that was. But later on, there's a story about his friend that he was living with at the time converted him to a peacenik, and he had announced it will be different after the election.
Nowadays, more than ever, the brand.
That is an interesting take. Does he have anything more to say on this, or is this just a plug for Pat? Yeah, it is, for PBD. Check out his channel, Valuetainment, or the PBD podcast. Check out Ron Paul. I think this is the Liberty Report. It's on Rumble. You can find me on Rumble. But I gave you my theory. I don't know. Like, I could be wildly wrong. I'd hate to say that it was just ignorance the whole way through, and then they all had to cover their butts to keep their careers intact because a president died. But that could be the case. It could be, obviously, the second shooter. That could have been it. But I know there was the kill shot we've all seen where Kennedy gets it in the head. But like just before that, he was shot through the back of the neck, through his throat. You could see it in the Zapruder film when he goes like this first. That likely would have been a kill shot too. Getting shot through the neck, through your esophagus. We've seen the exit wound. How's he get? What are they gonna do? They didn't. It was just a motorcade. They didn't have medical equipment that you would need. You would have like maybe 2 minutes to stop the bleeding and get his airways open. Like he was already a goner after the first shot. So I don't know. Like, share, subscribe, comment, clip it, do all that stuff. Buy your products down below. Get on the mailing list, and I'll see you in the next video, guys. Leave your comments.